Hello, this is Matthew Fuerst, an instructor with the Computer Workshop, and what I'm going to talk about in today's video is how to get yourself set up to start Python programming. So what I'm going to look at is how to install the Python interpreter, and then look at installing two of the more popular IDEs, Visual Studio Code and PyCharm. So, question I get asked a lot is, well, why learn Python programming? Well, Python programming is a language that is simple to learn, uses an English syntax, gets you up and running very quickly. It's open sourced and extensible. Because of that, there is a vast community support out there where you can get additional modules built by other developers that'll give you capabilities so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. A developer can go out and build a module to get you connected to a web page or a website, and then you can go out and make use of those modules in your own code. It's portable, meaning that it can run pretty much on any operating system from Windows to Linux, can be used on Raspberry Pis and other operating systems like that, Mac OS. And there are tons of free modules and packages already out there that will help you get started quickly with hopefully what your projects entail. As far as what types of code you can write with Python, you can build everything from standalone utility applications, web applications. It's very ingrained now with data science applications, deep learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence, scientific, numeric manipulation, and you'll also see it if you get into the home automation, uh, that Internet of Things. You can write code and run it on your Raspberry Pis. So you could use it to control, your thermostat. Could use it to, control a robot if that's what you need. But before you can get into actually building your applications, there's a few things that we're going to need. So the first thing that we're going to need is Python itself. And Python is an interpreted programming language. This is what makes it portable. So when you write out your code, you're going to write it into a source file. The source file is what's going to get deployed to where you need the code to run. And as long as where you put it has a Python interpreter, it's program it once and forget about it. So I can write a Python code on a Windows computer, pick it up, move that same source code over to a Mac computer or a Linux machine, and as long as they have the Python interpreter installed, it'll work perfectly fine. In this video, I'm going to concentrate on getting this set up for Windows computers, but if you do need to install this on Linux, Mac OS, if we do get enough responses, so in the comments area, if you're interested in seeing how to get it set up in Linux or on a Mac OS, please let us know, and in a future video, we may address that. But for right now, I'm just going to deal with getting it installed on Windows. So where you're going to find Python is if you go out to www.python.org, and in the downloads area for Windows, my recommendation is just click on download Python, and this will get you the latest stable version of Python will get downloaded. I've already done that, so we don't have to watch that happen. So to get the install to work, once you get the file installed, and it's just going to be Python and whatever version it is, and make sure you get the right version for your operating system. So in my case, I'm running Windows 10, which is a 64-bit operating system. So that's why I'm going to be running this Python 3.92-AMD 64 executable. So when I start this up, this will go out and do installation. Um, we're just going to use the default install. This should work for most users. It'll give you pretty much everything that you'll need to get yourself started with Python. The only recommendation that I have is if you are running as an administrator, install the launcher for all users. This will allow anyone that may log on to this computer to be able to use Python. And then the second thing I recommend is checking off this checkbox, add Python to your path statement. What this will do is with Windows, if you're going to run a program, Windows only looks in the current directory by default to see if that program is there. If the program isn't there, it then looks at the path statement to see if it can find that program. If it can't find the program in the path statement, you'll get an error message, command not found. So by adding Python to your path statement, when we go to run Python files from a command prompt, Windows will be able to find the interpreter, and it's usually best practice to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on install now, and it's going to go out and start the installation. All right, now that the installation has completed successfully, just going to go ahead and click on close here. And now if we want to see if Python has been installed successfully, easiest way to test it is to click on your start menu and type in CMD and just get us to a command prompt in Windows. And then what we can do is we can type in a command python dash version. Sorry, it's actually dash dash version. And this will show you what version of Python is currently installed. If you get a error message, like I did up here, I forgot to put in my extra dash, but if you put in the double dashes version, it will return what version is currently installed. If you get that error message, command is not found, what happened was in the installation, you forgot to check off that box to go in and update the path statement. So if you do get the command not found, in Windows, if you want to see your path statement, you can go into File Explorer. So just click on this icon here on your Windows 10 machine, right click on this PC, and then go into Properties. And then from the Properties, if we come down here to About, and then scroll down, there's a link here in Windows for Advanced System Settings. In the advanced system settings, there's this button here, environmental variables. If you click on that, down here under your system variables, there is a variable called path. And if you click on edit there, what you'll want to make sure of is that you see the path to where you installed Python to. So one of the things that if you're not sure, make sure you wrote down where it got installed to. But if you're doing the default install, it'll be under C, uh, program files, Python, and just make sure that that gets put into your environmental variables. So wherever Python got installed to, that's where you'll need to make sure that that path is updated. All right, so now that we have our interpreter set up, the next thing we need in order to start writing code, and you really don't need anything special to write Python. Any text editor will work, but my recommendation is get yourself what is called an IDE, an integrated development environment. With an IDE, it'll understand the language for you. So it will do things like type ahead, give you the capabilities of doing debugging of your code, where if you're just using a text editor, we would have to run the Python through the command prompt, see what errors we were getting, and then try to fix it from there. So there are two very popular IDEs out there. The first one is PyCharm from JetBrains. So if you go out to www.jetbrains.com/PyCharm, and that's PyCharm, this will get you into the PyCharm website. And when you go to the download area, there is a professional version, but there is also a open source free community edition, and that's what I've downloaded already. The second IDE that is very popular out there is Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code comes from Microsoft. So if you just go out to code.visualstudio.com and then click on the download link, Visual Studio Code is also open sourced and it is community licensed, so it is free to use. And that's why I recommend one of these two. They'll give you everything that you'll need to actually do Python development. So I've already downloaded both of these, so we don't have to watch that happen. So the first one I'm going to get installed is PyCharm. So when you download it, it's going to have a file name of PyCharm-community and then a version number. The version number that I downloaded was released March 3rd of 2020, and that's what this number represents here. So to install PyCharm, we're just going to start up the executable. And accept that warning here. And next, just choose the location. The default location will put it into program files, which is fine. And if you want to create a shortcut to the desktop, we can just check off the desktop shortcut. We can associate our py files. So when you write Python script files, their extension is going to be a .py. Again, this is all dependent on what you want to do. I'm going to add the launcher to the desktop just so we can quickly and easily get back into it. We can also add the launcher to the path statement, just like we did with PyCharm. So if for some reason you're to run this from a command prompt, you need to make sure that Windows can find that, and we can add the launcher to our path statement. I'm not going to do that just because I'm going to install multiple IDEs, and that's also why I'm not going to do the association. Is I'm going to have both Visual Studio and PyCharm, and I want to be able to make the choice of which one I use for PY files. I don't want my Python files automatically opening in one or the other IDEs. So I'm going to click on Next here. It's going to create a Start menu folder for us, and then we click on Install, and it's going to start the installation for us. All right, when the installation is finished, we can now just check the checkbox Run PyCharm Community Edition, and then click on Finish. This will go out and start the program for the first time. When it starts up, you have to accept the licensing agreement. And then you have the option of sending data statistics, usage statistics to JetBrains. Leave that up to you. I'm not going to send right now. And in a moment here, PyCharm will be started for us. Okay, once PyCharm gets installed, what we need to do in PyCharm to start doing programming is we need to create a project. And basically all a project is a directory where you'll go in and put all of the Python files that are associated for whatever application you're building. So we'll just click on New Project here. And by default, it'll put your project in your user's home directory in Windows, and then we can just create a Python project name. So in this case, our project is going to be Hello World. We're just going to write a simple script to test to make sure that everything is working for us. and we're just going to leave all the other information here. So when it does create the project, it'll figure out which Python interpreter you have installed. And it is possible to have different versions of Python installed on one computer. So if you see when you click on this drop down, different Python folders and different Python in a number folder, that just means you have multiple interpreters installed, which you can, and then you can pick the interpreter that you want to use for this project. So in our case, we only have Python 3.9 installed, so we'll just click on Create here, and what this will do is go out and create a project for us. We will get the tip of the day. So if you don't want to see the tips of the day every time you start up PyCharm, just check this box and click on Close, and it will finish getting our environment set up for us. All right, and the first time you start PyCharm, it can take a few moments to get into it. It has to download some additional features to get everything working. So, next thing I recommend if you're just starting out, there are different views that we can have into PyCharm. My recommendation is start with just the project file. Um, sorry, show the open files options here. This will show you all open files that you have for this specific project. And if I need to create a new file, what we'll do here is we'll just click on the file menu choice, select new, and what we'll be able to do is go out and create a new file. The other way we could do this is we could click on the Control Shift N in our system, and this will get us our new file information. So in this case, if I want to create a new file, I can specify what file I want here. So if I go back here to my project, um, again, I can right click, select new, and then Python file to create the new Python file. With your Python file, just give it a name. So in this case, I'm going to call my file hello. It is going to have a .py extension when we create it. So when I create my new hello file, we'll get this now off to our right in our interpreter. And if we want to do a simple test to make sure that our IDE is going to work, we're going to write a simple command to reflect some text back to our console. And how we do that is in Python, there is a print command. Print will print to the console in that you're running the application in. Um, why I recommend getting an IDE is for what you're seeing right now on my screen is this, if the IDE understands the programming language, as you start typing in your code, it's going to give us this IntelliSense auto completion. So if you type in the first couple of letters of a command that you want, it's going to show you the command and any of the parameters that it needs. So in my case, I want to run print, and then print just takes in quotation marks, what do I want to print back to the screen? So I'm going to type in hello world here, and then hit enter at the end of my line. And now to test your Python code through an IDE, most good IDEs are going to have a debugger or give you the capabilities of running the code. So if I click on run here, what it will do is it'll go out to show us our different configurations. So here we just want to run our hello.py. When we click on this, it'll then reflect hello world to the screen. So what I've done is I've shown you how to get the Python interpreter installed, and then I've shown you how to install PyCharm and see that it can work. The last IDE that I want to show you is Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code comes from Microsoft, and it's from that code.visualstudio.com website. So to do the setup of that, we're going to go in and run that executable just like we have for the other downloads that we've received or downloaded so far for this application. Um, First thing we'll need to do is we'll need to accept the licensing agreement. Click on Next. When we get to our next, it will create a desktop icon. It'll give us some options to open with code. Um, Again, I'm not going to register the code editor for the supported file types. And then I'm going to also add this to the path statement so that we will be able to make use of Visual Studio Code through a command prompt if we need it. Click on Next here, and that's pretty much the only questions we have to answer to get this ID installed. And we'll click on Install here. All right, once the install is finished, we're just going to go ahead and launch Visual Studio Code. With Visual Studio Code, it's slightly different than PyCharm. PyCharm is built just to do coding in Python. Visual Studio Code is a code editor that is available for a lot of different programming languages. I can do everything from JavaScript to Python and Java. If you want to do Python coding in Visual Studio Code, there is an extra step because it does understand multiple programming languages. When you get into the welcome screen on Visual Studio Code, you'll notice over here there is an option Install Support For, and we've got a link to Python. We need to install the support. So when you click on this, it'll ask you to uh, install. We're going to click on OK. And what it's going to do is it's going to install some additional extensions that are needed for us to create Python code. And in a moment here, it will go in and do the installation. What it does in the background is off to the left over here in Visual Studio Code, we've got this extensions area. And by clicking on this link, what it did is it installed the Python uh, extensions, and it also installed Juniper, which is a way of creating notebooks for coding, which again, not going to get too much into right now because this is just a how to get everything up and running video. And down the road, I will have other videos that will actually start showing you how to do some additional things with Python. So by us clicking on that install support, we now have our capabilities to do Python. So here we've got our Python capabilities. So now what we can do is inside of Visual Studio Code, we can now come up here to File, New File, and this will go out, create a new file for us. And because we've installed the extension for Python, when I do a File, Save here, we can choose where we want to put our file. And then down here under our save types, what we want to make sure of is that we go in and choose Python from this list. And then we can give this a whatever file name we want. So this is going to be our hello world. And by us choosing Python as the same save type, we'll add that .py extension. So when I click on save here, you'll now see that I've got the little icon, Python icon next to the file. And now when I type in, okay, now it's going to tell me getting started with the editor here. Uh, if I start typing in print here, you'll notice that it does get color coding. Um, and you'll notice down here that I have no Python interpreter selected, so I need to tell it which interpreter I want to use, because again, you could go in and have multiple interpreters set up for this. And then you may get another prompt about a linter not being installed. Go ahead and click on the installation for that. So you'll see some activity down here where it's going out and downloading some additional support for Python. And once it's now installed, what we should now be able to see is when we start doing this, it'll now do the type ahead just like or just like PyCharm would do. So if I choose print here, parenthesis, hello world. Once I've done that, I can now come up here and choose the run without debugging. And what it will do is it'll do exactly the same thing that PyCharm does, but it's just a different IDE. Um, Again, depending on what you're doing, is if you're just doing Python development, you may want to use the community edition of PyCharm. If you do programming across different languages, Visual Studio Code is a nice one because you could use one IDE for the different languages that are out there. Well, I hope that this video was informative for you. Please subscribe to our channel. We do offer videos on a wide variety of topics, from programming to how to use Office products. Uh, Thank you for your attention and have a good day.